Hey, beautiful people. Welcome into another episode of the Fat Guy Podcast. I am the Fat Guy. Most people just call me Brett. Glad to have you along. Boy, people have been following me on my weight loss journey for a long time, and it's had many iterations. It's had ups and downs. I've had victories. I've had defeats. Um, but still, we press forward. We're still ahead of the game from when we started. And I started this journey back in, I was thinking about this the other day. I started my health and weight loss journey back in 2013. May of 2013 to be exact. So May of this year made 6 years. And while I have gained weight back from my lowest weight, I'm still considerably lighter than I was when I started 6 years ago. As a matter of fact, I am 48 pounds lighter than I was 6 years ago. Now, you try to find people who have lost 48 pounds and kept it off for 6 years, and this isn't bragging on me. I just want to put it in context. That's rarefied air because it's the studies show that most people at max lose weight for a year. At the end of a year, 95% of people who lost weight have gained it all back plus some. And at the end of 2 years, the numbers are staggering. It's like 98, 99% or something. Like over the long term, I think it's their 5-year marker. It's something like about 1% of people that lost weight have managed to keep weight off. So I just say that to put it in context because I'm thinking about how long I've been doing the podcast. And I've been doing it a very long time. You know, way back when we were taking some kind of a weight loss supplement is how we started. Then we moved into raw veganism, and then we moved into cooked vegan, and then we moved into keto. Then we started implementing intermittent fasting, and then we moved to a more carnivore form of keto. And where I'm at now is primarily implementing fasting because I think it gives me a little bit more freedom. Most of the thing people don't understand about keto, or about fasting rather, fasting is keto. Once I get past about the 24-hour mark of fasting, my body's in a state of ketosis, and it stays in ketosis till I eat again. And depending on what I eat, it may continue to stay in ketosis. So I like to think of fasting as extreme ketosis. It's just a different form of a ketogenic diet. There's the ketogenic diet that has a lot of vegetables in it. There's the ketogenic diet that's mostly carnivore. Then there's ketogenic, which is based strictly on fasting. I like to mix things up, and this is what I've learned is it keeps me from getting bored. So anyway, the subject of today's podcast is going to be eating fast food and losing weight. And I'm going to try to keep it in the context of keto or low carb. At the very minimum, not blowing up your carbohydrates and the storage of carbs and the changing of carbs into fat, lipogenesis, this type stuff, because that's where it gets you. Because if you're already keto, you can find some keto things. If you're low carb, you can find some low carb things. And then you get into the whole realm of trying to find healthy things. So, that being said, you heard an ad at the beginning. You're going to hear an ad at the ending, and you will hear an ad somewhere 15 to 20 minutes into this podcast. That's how I'm trying to offset cost of podcasting hosting. I ain't getting rich doing this. It's about $7 a month I've been making, and that's only just this year. I've done this for 5 years, didn't make any money ever. Out of pocket, I just footed the bill. I don't, my time is free, my research is free, all this stuff, because I just like to help people. But, it would be really nice to offset the cost of podcast hosting. So that's what the ads are for. If you don't like the ads, you can become a patron. Go to losewithmason.com and chunk me a few bucks, and you'd be shocked. Two things: how much those few bucks would mean to me, and how far it would go to helping me cover the cost of podcast hosting. Hello to my patrons who have made this podcast possible: Cindy Carr, Bessie Williams, Kenneth Wilkerson, Bobby Houston. You guys are amazing. Love you guys so much. Of course, patrons get the podcast commercial-free, ad-free, and fluff-free. Anything that's in it that's fluff, where I'm going on and on about the social media or the subscribing, I just take all that out because it doesn't apply to you. You know where you get your podcast from. You know that it's on the Patreon account, and it's that you get it 3 days early, or sometimes 4 days early, sometimes even 5 days early. So you get the podcast 5 days earlier, and you get it without the commercials and stuff. So Plus, you go to the front line for questions, and we post patron-only things for you guys. So I appreciate you. Just don't know how much I appreciate you guys so much. So that being said, let's jump right into it. How about eating at fast food? Now, look, if you try to say that eating at fast food is going to be healthy, it's just not. There's fillers, there's additives, there's the preparation. I could go on and on with a list of issues with fast food. That being said, modern life, if you think about life 150 years ago, people got their vegetables out of their garden and they either grew their meat or they traded something for meat for the guy that, lived a mile down the road on his farm. And then you moved to where you had a community. You might have had a small town store. Everything, again, was fresh. Everybody worked locally. They worked on their homestead or on their farm, or they worked down the road a piece. It was not all this traveling and being away from things. And now life is all about being away from home. And there's just times when you have to eat fast food, and there's times where it's definitely convenient. There's sometimes where it's almost mandatory, really, if you're going to eat. Now, as a person who fasts a lot, I would say that eating is never mandatory unless you're already super thin, you're emaciated, you're malnourished. You don't ever have to eat. And I like to tell people that. Like, I've had people say, God, I was so stressed and I was on this company trip and they stopped at such and such a place for lunch and I couldn't figure out what to eat and I just screwed up and I ate all these carbs and now I'm bloated and I've gained 10 pounds of water weight and I don't know what to do. And the first thing I like to tell them is, if you were going to be somewhere later you could eat, like that night or, whatever, your first option if you're overwhelmed is to just not eat. Order an unsweetened tea, order a black coffee, worst case scenario, get a Diet Coke or a Coke Zero, and sit down with them and drink that and watch them eat. Because you just don't have to eat. You just don't. If you're fat, you don't have to eat. I use this guy as an example all the time, but there's many of them. Angus Barbieri was a guy back in, I think, the 30s. He still holds the world record for the longest fast. He fasted 384 days. He started out at like 426 pounds, I think. He fasted 384 days, and he was fine. He was the healthiest he'd ever been, and he never gained the weight back right up till the day he died. A more modern example is a guy on YouTube called The Fasting Fat Man. That's the name of his channel if you want to follow it. He's very inspirational. He's a great guy. I love following his videos. He just finished a 70-day fast. And if you're thinking that's crazy, that ain't nothing. He started the year with a fast that lasted 150 days. So he fasted 150 days. Then he did refeeds for about a week. And then, he did refeeds for about a week, and then he did OMAD, 1 meal a day, for a couple of months, and then he fasted another 70 days. Altogether, the guy has fasted 220 days this year. He's lost over 300 pounds. So you don't have to eat. There's this lie out there you have to eat. People go, oh God, I feel so famished. Look, I'm not making fun of anybody. I'm making fun of myself because I remember I did it many days. I weighed 400 pounds and I missed breakfast. And by 11, I'm like, oh, God, I'm so weak. I'm so famished. I need food. No, you're not famished and you don't need food. You literally have 400 pounds of food around your gut that your body can access and eat. You're going to be fine, man. You're going to be fine. Anyway, let's jump right into it. I know sometimes I sound harsh. Sometimes it sounds funny. I'm never preachy. I promise you, anything I talk about is something I've done. So, I'm in the choir. So, here's the things to look at when you go to fast food. Number one is you never want to get the chicken. First of all, it's rarely real chicken. Even their white meat chicken usually has rib meat in it and some kind of weird deconstructed chicken mixed in with it. And then on top of that, chicken is the unhealthiest meat that's grown. They pump it full of antibiotics and growth hormone. And these chickens are kept in these chicken houses where they breathe in their own ammonia for their own. If you've never walked in a chicken house, you don't know. I've told this story before. I had a friend that worked on a place that had 3 chicken houses, and he ran them. And I walked in the chicken houses with him. I could only stay in there and breathe for a minute or two, and I had to get out. The ammonia was so thick in there, I was gasping for air. And I was like, "How do you work in this every day?" Well, those chickens are sitting in that, breathing it all day from the time they're put in there till the time that they're harvested out, which is, I don't know, 6 or 8 weeks later or something. It's a pretty fast turnaround on those birds now. But so you got that going on. Chicken's just not the healthiest. It's the leanest. So it often gets touted as the healthiest because it's the leanest. But it's definitely, for all those reasons I just mentioned, it's not going to be your choice. You want to go with the beef. So, if you're at a burger place, obviously that means getting the burger instead of the chicken. That's what you want to opt for. That's number one. So what's going to fill you up, what's going to satiate you, and what's going to provide you with the best form of nutrition and help keep you strong is going to be protein. So go with protein and go with the beef version of the protein. That is tip number one. That should be the foundation for whatever you do. And at a lot of places, depending on where you're at, that's where it'll stop, because that'll pretty much be all you'll be able to get is the beef, and that's it. So moving on from there, step number two, what can you do? Well, you're maxing the protein. Number two is you want to minimize the carbs. So, what does that look like? Well, obviously you're not buying the fries. If it's a place that has corn nuggets, you're not buying the corn nuggets. You're not having the mac and cheese, you're not having the mashed potatoes. If you're buying a burger, basically at a burger place. We'll talk about Taco Bell later, and other places like Taco Bell might be applicable too. But right now we're talking probably mainly burger places, because that's mainly what fast food is burger places. There's a few places that aren't. Obviously this would mean not going to Chick-fil-A, which is going to blow some people's minds. That doesn't mean you can't do it. It's just saying it's not the best option. And if you get stuck at Chick-fil-A and you want to go with some of the chicken, I would go with those grilled chicken bites, but minimize the carbs. So how do you do that? Well, you eat the burger without the bun. If you're not a keto person and you're just a low carb person, well, take half the bun off. Take the big fat top portion of the bun off and just leave the bottom one on. I'd say get it without the ketchup. You're going to have anywhere between 4 to 8 carbs with nothing but ketchup. If it's the 1 spoon, it's 4 carbs, and if it winds up being 2, or actually 5, depending on the brand. So it could be 4 to 8 or 5 to 10, something like that, depending on the brand. So you literally could have 10 carbs just from ketchup. Opt for mayo and mustard. Now, mayo isn't the best. It's got horrible soybean oil, which is non-GMO, which means you're getting all these glyphosates and all this stuff that comes along with it. So probably not the best option, but better than ketchup in terms of managing your weight. You can decide how extreme. I'm sorry. As soon as I decided to record this, my sinuses started running, but I've started it, and I haven't had any sinus problems ever until just now. Like, literally, it just started. I don't know what that's about. So I apologize, but we're going to plow through because I've started the podcast, and I'm not starting it over. So minimize the carbs. So, focus on the protein. I'll tell you one of the things I like to do is you don't get the big burger that they feature. Like most all these places have a small economy size double burger or triple burger. Like I know Burger King has a triple, I think. But it's not like the Baconator triple, which is humongous and way expensive. Like on the value menu, they have a triple. And then most places like McDonald's or whatever have just a regular double. I think McDonald's is the McDouble. I think Wendy's has a double cheeseburger thing that's $1 something. Get a couple of those. Now, you really want to maximize the protein and minimize the carb. Buy a couple of those so that you wind up with either 4 if you get the double or 6 if you get the triple beef patties. Get one of the burgers with cheese. Don't get cheese on the other one because that's way too much cheese. Okay, cheese is two carbs a slice. If you get the triple and you wind up with somewhere between 4 and 6 slices of cheese, you're somewhere between 8 and 12 carbs just in cheese. That's way too much cheese. So don't get cheese on all of it. But then you can take, like if you're low carb, you're not keto, you're low carb, you just throw the buns from one of those doubles or triples away, stack all the meat on the other one so you have a big stacked up quadruple or sextuple burger with just one bun, and you're getting tons of protein. It's going to be delicious, and you're only getting one bun. If you're keto, throw all the buns away and eat it with a fork. That's your options. Minus the ketchup. Go with mustard and mayo. So I get asked a lot about salads, man. You got to do your research on salads. The good news is you can check the websites and figure this out. But generally speaking, a salad that has a ranch dressing is going to probably be okay, or a salad that has a blue cheese dressing is going to be okay. But go to their website and look up their salads and see how many carbs it's got with the dressing. That's how you'll know. Obviously, if the best dressing they've got comes with croutons and crap like that, throw the croutons out. And then the last thing I would say is, just because they give you 2 packets of dressing or a large pack, you don't got to put all that on there. Put the minimum you have to put on there if you want a salad. But if they don't have good salad options, just skip them, you know? Now, if they do have good salad options, you could have a salad and you could have beef. I would say don't get the chicken on it. The chicken is just not healthy. It's not good. That would be my advice. So specific to Taco Bell, there's not a ton you can do at Taco Bell. Even the beef has some carbs in it because of stuff they season it with. But you can get a beef taco, but just instead of getting a taco, ask them for a taco bowl, and so that way you don't get the carbs in the actual taco shell. Get the taco bowl, and then make sure you skip the beans and rice. Say, whichever one you order, say I don't want any beans or I don't need rice, and then tell them to add extra beef to it. So you'll be replacing the beans and rice with extra beef. Obviously, the sour cream is okay if you don't get crazy with it, and it's pretty good. But there's just not a lot you can eat at Taco Bell. That's pretty much the only option you're going to have there. And my last thing to talk about, obviously, is what you drink. So the obvious things are water. Clearly, you can have water. You can get unsweetened tea at all those places. That would be my first recommendation. My second recommendation is if you just can't stomach unsweetened tea, and I would suggest you to start trying to drink it, because if you do it enough, you'll start to like it almost as much as you like sweet tea. It just takes time. But if you just absolutely can't handle it, do 1 Splenda packet, just 1. And if you can't do any of that, then you move to the worst of the worst, which is the Diet Coke or the Coke Zero. All right. And again, worst comes to worst, there ain't nothing there that you can eat. You just have the drink, and you sit there and you socialize with your friends, and they're going to look at you like you're weird, and your health and your life is more important than your friends not looking at you like you're weird. So you just let them look, and you have lunch with them, and you talk and laugh about all the things they talk and laugh about, and you just skip the meal, and you know that your blood sugars are going down, your insulin's going down, your body's getting healthier as a result of it, and while they're probably eating horrible stuff and getting less healthy, you're at the same table they're at getting more healthy. That is the reward. Yeah, again, I've talked about this in a lot of the podcasts, but you have to adopt the mindset that your reward is improving your health and improving your weight. That's your reward. The food isn't your reward. The food is increasing your health and decreasing your weight. That's your reward. You have to go, I'm rewarding myself, not depriving myself. Okay? Anytime you're in a situation where your mind starts to think about what you're depriving yourself of, you grab your mind by the head of the hair of the head, by the hair of the head, and go, listen to me. Our reward is improved health, longevity, and weight loss. That's the reward. We're rewarding ourselves. We're not depriving ourselves. Thank you again so much, patrons. Thank you. If you're not a patron and you had to listen to some ads, first of all, I want to apologize to the ads. I don't like running ads, but I really want to be able to pay for the podcast hosting of the podcast. I do. I talked about this before. I think it's like $18 a month or something, and currently the podcast is making me like $7 a month. So, for 5 years, I never got a dime for doing the podcast. And I'm not trying to make money and definitely not. I'd never get rich doing this, but look, if it means anything to you and you've gotten anything from it and you could spare a few bucks to chunk it my way, go to losewithmason.com and you can become a patron, and you'll get the commercial-free, fluff-free, streamlined version of the podcast. You'll get it 3 to 5 days earlier than anybody else gets the podcast to the general public. You won't have the commercials. And a lot of other perks that I give you for being a patron. So if you want to check that out, it's losewithmason.com. Add us on social media. Fat Guy Podcast is the username across the board. And subscribe to the podcast. Now, if you are a patron, listen real carefully. When you signed up, and when you go to your main page, if you missed it when you signed up, you will see a link where you can actually put a link in your podcasting client on your smartphone or on your tablet, and you can get this patron-only feed the same way you get it a regular podcast. So if you can't figure that out or you have problems with it, shoot me a message and I'll try to help you, because you have your own unique feed. Like, there's not just one feed. When you become a patron, you get your own feed, because that way, if you decide to not be a patron one day, then your feed link goes dead. That's why it's not just one. So it's unique to you, and you can find it when you first signed up. It should have been one of the first things you saw on your member page when you scroll down. But you can copy that link, and then you'll need to go Google whatever client you're using. If you're using the standard iOS app, there's a little way to add a custom URL, and you paste it in there. And anyway, you should be able to figure it out, but if you can't, I'll try to help you if I can. Thank you so much. Share this. You might change somebody's life, and I appreciate you listening today.